Welcome back to yet another episode of The Big Hit.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, everyone, to The Big Hit.
Welcome to today's episode of The Big Hit. I'm Katie Dodds.
Sports Jeopardy. I'm assuming everyone already knows how to play Jeopardy,
and welcome to The Big Hit's 2019 edition of Scrap for Your City.
Welcome back to The Big Hit. I'm Elliot Hicks. This is Tristan Borland, and we're here for some IUP basketball analysis. We got the businessman in the bum, and we're going to tell you about some IUP basketball. So there were some very close games, both on the men's and the women's side, against Gannon. Gannon, a team that in both the men's and women's sides, they're not very good, but they're also, they're on the fringes of the postseason race, and they're a team to be taken seriously, and IUP really had to deal with that with both the women's and the men's teams. We'll start with the women's game. The Crimson Hawks won by just 5 points. It was a 59-54 matchup. The star of this game was definitely Justina Mascaro. She had 23 points on the night. Very big night for the transfer.
That was huge for her. And Elliot, I was going to mention the fact that she came into the season, she was obviously the big name, that she was the transfer. She was the big player that everybody thought was going to make a big difference, but she had a very quiet season, falling behind three-point shooters like Natalie Myers, Courtney Alexander, Lexi Griggs, fighter inside the paint. She kind of, had a very quiet season so far, but you're absolutely right. Whenever Gannon came to play at the KCAC, she came to play as well.
And it was another big game for some of those stars you mentioned. Lexi Griggs had 10 points, but so did Raja Fink. And Raja Fink is someone that's really come into her own over the last couple of weeks for the Crimson Hawks.
Absolutely. She is really... We always say for IUP-TV Sports, we always mention the fact that she's kind of like the sixth man on the roster. If the first person to give subbed out, Fink always comes in. It doesn't really seem to matter what position. She seems to be able to kind of just step in and be wherever she needs to be.
Right, so the Crimson Hawks are still doing very well despite losing their program record losing streak, and they're still set for the #1 seed in the PSAC tournament that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. Only 4 more games left in the regular season, starting with the games against Edinburgh, which will have been completed by the time you watch this. But that's what's next up as we're here filming this for the women's team, still, of course, on top of the PSAC, as is the men's team, who also had a very close game against the Gannon Golden Knights, winning by just a couple of points in a game that really came down to the wire.
It did. IUP only winning by 3, and Elliot, something that I thought about Gannon is not the fact that they really played a good game. Not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that they were not very technically sound. It was their physicality that they brought into the court. Multiple different Gannon players almost fouling out of the game. I think that there was at least 3 players that had at least 3 fouls on the night. Chucky Humphreys, I know, had 4 on the night. I'm trying to think of Ethan Porterfield probably had at least 2, just based on his position.
Right? Yeah, it was a really physical game. Frank Webb Jr. and Matt Johnson both had 4 fouls, but they also had some of the most points other than Deontay Cicero, who had 18 points. Frank Webb had 17, Matt Johnson had 10. And the final score of this one, 85-83. Now, it wasn't quite that close in the dying seconds of the game. No. Gannon had they had a 3-point shot toward the end that made it look really close. But this was still much, much closer than IUP would have wanted. But the play of 2 players, one in the first half, one in the second half, really set IUP apart. Armani Foster had 20 points in the first half, ended the night with 26. Malik Miller, 7 in the first half, 23 in the second half. He had another 30-point game. And even though IUP has not really looked at that positively in the rankings, the Atlantic region is relatively weak compared to a lot of the other regions around Division II. But Malik Miller and Armani Foster can just take a game over at any given time for IUP.
Absolutely. Foster being one of those players, the sophomore hailing from Meadville, he is one of those players that always reminds me of being a dual threat. Of course, he has the offensive skills. He very good with the ball handling, great shooter, but he has also been named the PSAC Defensive Player of the Week for his performance at Gannon. He can do both. And Malik Miller is one of those players that the moment you put the ball into his hand, you should be shaking in your boots because that dude is about to break your ankles and send you away on that ambulance immediately. Both those players are going to really need to step it up, Elliot, if IUP wants to make a very serious playoff run.
Well, we're certainly hoping there aren't any ambulance trips during the games, but I see what you were saying there. Malik definitely a guy who can really get around offensively, and I'm honestly kind of surprised that IUP is doing this well. Obviously, this was a good team. We saw Malik and Armani as lighter pieces last year, but after losing guys like Kobo Diaz and Willem Brunrick, and I've said it time and again, I really thought those would be bigger losses, but it really seems like the IUP starting 5 hasn't been affected.
No, especially whenever you think about, Kobo Diaz being one of those bigger players. Another big player name that pops into my mind, I say it every single time I'm in front of a camera or behind a microphone.
He's worth mentioning every time. He's had that good of a season.
Yeah, 6 6'8" tall, hailing from Sharon, PA. It's Ethan Porterfield, the freshman. The freshman. I don't think we can understate that enough, that he is a true freshman coming in here with, I remember talking to Chucky Humphreys, didn't have a whole lot of expectations for him, but he has just absolutely blown everybody away. I expect to see that continue, not just for the rest of the season, but the rest of his collegiate career here at IUP.
Right, definitely no better time for an injury, I guess, as much as you hate to see guys get hurt. That forced Ethan Porterfield into the starting lineup, and he's done nothing but thrive.
I wonder if that is possibly due to the fact that they are coached by such a phenomenal coach. Coach Lombardi, his win against Gannon is his 200th conference victory in his career. 14 years here at IUP, and he's currently going to try and see if he can get a 10th regular season division title in his 14 years here at IUP.
Yep, you rack up those wins against your conference, you're going to be in good shape, just like the Crimson Hawks are, just like the women's team. They're top in the PSAC West. They're likely to host a good bit of games coming into the Atlantic region, whether they win the conference or not. That's the crazy thing, is they're set up pretty well whether they win the PSAC or not, just because of how good they've been during the regular season.
They make sure you tune in on IUP-TV Sports for all of the men and women's basketball action.
Yep, and we'll have it all the way through, but we'll be right back on The Big Hit.
Thank you for joining us, folks, here on The Big Hit. My name is Tristan Boylan, alongside me, Joey Chrisman, and today we are the only two individuals in Indiana, PA, watching the XFL. Of course, over Valentine's Day weekend. Oh, that was trying to watch some of that XFL was a little bit of a nail biter for me.
Yeah, a little bit.
Defenders and Guardians. My Guardians are the first teams in XFL history to be shut out on the road against the DC Defenders. The Defenders' defense was no joke, and Cardell Jones was 23 for 37 with 276 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hopefully my Guardians can return to Week 1 form in a short period of time, as they only have 10 games this season to bring their overall record back up to a more respectable number. In the 5 p.m. slot on Saturday, the Dragons over the Vipers. Dragons 17, Vipers 9. This game was what people were afraid of whenever people talk about spring football. Because, Joey, to put it simple, the play on the field was terrible.
It is.
It was bad. The Dragons were bad, and the Vipers were even worse. This game sets the Vipers back to 0-2 in a 10-game season, as earlier stated. This is really bad, considering the Vipers were favored by Vegas to be the champions in this league at the end of the season. And they have just fumbled away the season, just like every opportunity that they have in a single drive. Moving on to the Sunday matchups and the 3 p.m. slot, Renegades over top of the Wildcats 25-18. And Landry Jones finally starts in this matchup and finally takes control of the football team that he was set to take care of whenever he left the NFL. He was not flashy or special, but he was serviceable, just like how he was in Pittsburgh. He was never the guy, he was never the man, so in this game he wasn't either. But he was able to lead the Renegades to their first victory in this season so far. Roughnecks 28, Battlehawks 24. Later on Sunday, PJ Walker was not as dominant in this week's matchup, but still, you cannot deny his X factor. He reminds me a lot of like a Russell Wilson, and not much of a scrambler, but definitely the moment he starts moving out of that pocket, you need to be terrified. And that helped the Roughnecks go on to a gritty victory over top of the Battlehawks in Week 2. And Joey, I know that you as well are as excited to see this league continue, but you gave me some grim news.
Yeah, if you're like me and Tristan, you actually want this league to succeed. But, however, I have some bad news. I have about 3 reasons why this league might not succeed. One of the reasons is there are no star players. Like the NFL, there is Tom Brady, Odell Beckham, Saquon Barkley. Those players have been able to prove what they've been able to do on the field. But in the XFL, there's none of that. They have Cardell Jones, who was from the Ohio State Buckeyes. He's been pretty good at times, but not too special. You had Matt McGloin, who was on Penn State, went to the Raiders for a little bit, got cut immediately, and then played good Week 1, got shut out the second week.
It was hard to watch.
Yeah, there's not a lot of players you can really, watch to really think about, they're going to be special. Next is NFL competitors have failed miserably. There are 5 leagues in the past that have failed. One of them was the World Football League, only ran for 1 season. United States Football League, which featured stars like Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Reggie White, and Herschel Walker only ran for 3 seasons as well. The Arena Football League, which fell drastically in the 2000s. You have the Alliance of American Football, which only lasted 2 months, if you remember, last year. Started in February, but fell because of money issues. And then you have the United Football League that lasted from 2009 to 2012. So it's safe to say that every single league, beside the NFL, has crashed. And the only other league that's actually been going on is college, which is pretty much its own separate thing. Yeah. And it's like a good second viewing to the NFL. And then you have the original XFL failed. Even though that the first week back in 2001 when it first aired, the ratings were through the roof. They had over 3 million people watching on TV the first week. The second week, it failed miserably, dropped off the cliff when it came to ratings. And nowadays, people aren't even watching TV. They're on TikTok, they're on YouTube, Netflix, Hulu. The fact that nowadays people aren't as on TV as often as they are, the ratings aren't going to be as good whatsoever. So, like I said, I really hope this league succeeds. I know you do. I know a lot of people do, because I like watching football. I wish I could watch it all the time, from fall to spring to summer. But if this league, I have a feeling that's going to be what it did last time. It's going to play 1 season, hopefully maybe make a second season, but I just don't see it happening. Like I said, I'm optimistic, but in reality,
that's all we can be.
In reality, the NFL has been going on since the 1900s, and this league is just, I don't think it's going to last.
Unfortunate. Joe, do you have any hot takes for this upcoming week? Any players that you think are going to really stand out? I'm thinking Mac McGloin is going to bounce back.
I hope so. I really do hope so. Not only because I'm a Penn State fan. Honestly, it is because I'm a Penn State fan. That's the only reason. I hope he does bounce back, because one of the big problems in the XFL is a quarterback problem. You don't have any 300-yard passing quarterbacks like you do in the NFL. You don't have any quarterbacks throwing 5 touchdowns per game like you do in the NFL. So you don't see those big, strong-arm quarterbacks, no lookers like Patrick Mahomes, no scrambling quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson. That's the big thing about the XFL, is you don't see the start-setting quarterbacks like you do in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And the one quarterback, Walker, which team is he on again?
PJ Walker.
PJ Walker. I've seen him scramble, and we talked about this before. He scrambles, to me, like a worse version of Lamar Jackson. You said Deshaun Watson, which I have to agree with you. He does scramble. He likes to get away from people. He doesn't really like to leave the pocket, but he does know how to avoid defenders, which, like I said, he is somebody to look after. But beside that, not Emmanuel Sanders, Eli Rogers, who, by the way, missed his mother's funeral to play in the game.
Shows you the dedication a lot of these players have.
Dedication. I don't know if I would have done that, but a paycheck's a paycheck, but I don't know about losing your mother. But I do believe, he played for the Steelers for about 3 seasons. He's shown what he can do. I think that he is another player to watch in this league. Hopefully, he really breaks out as a star-studded player in the league. That way, people can have actually something to watch that's actually good.
That would be great.
That would be great. Well, what about you? Any hot takes? Any kind of players you want to look after?
Definitely, I want to watch the situation over in Tampa Bay with the Vipers. They currently have a quarterback controversy right now. They have 2 quarterbacks that they don't know what to do with. Their whole team is just kind of, I don't know why. I would have taken PJ Walker and the Renegades to win it all at the beginning of the season. I don't know why the Vipers were so highly praised. I mean, Murray just isn't the guy.
Let me ask you this question. What do you think about sideline reporters going up to players immediately after they screwed something up, like, hey, so you screwed that play up. What happened? What did you do?
I love that. That is so awesome. So there's something a lot of people brought up about the last XFL. There are a lot of things in the XFL, like the sky cam that you see so often in kickoffs for the NFL. That started in the first XFL. I'm wondering, in this next NFL season, we're going to see more of those sideline reports that are instantaneous. If we're going to see more plays that are rushed, like how instead of having a 40-second play clock, it's going to go down to 20 seconds like how the XFL has. There are a lot of rules that I think would really help move along the sport of football.
I do agree with you for the most part. However, the reason the NFL does do post-game interviews is because, during the game, your testosterone's high, your adrenaline's high, you're angry, you're sad, your emotions going. So the reason they do post-game interviews is because it gives the players and coaches a chance to relax a little bit.
No,
But
I don't want
immediately
that.
after the play, like say you threw a game losing pick, you go up to the quarterback, say, hey, you just cost your team the game. What'd you do? They're obviously gonna go off the deep end, say, hey, we suck. The team's just not good. Or they're gonna do what that one quarterback did, is throw the team under the bus, which is not not very good sportsmanship. So I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why the NFL doesn't do that. For entertainment purposes, I like it because it gives us, viewers something we haven't seen before, and just, we get to see, bumbles like that, people throwing each other under the bus, and the linemen saying, "Hey, our team sucks, sorry." But I think honestly, that's one of the reasons why I like the XFL. But I mean, they just gotta. Hopefully, everything works out.
And hopefully they can get over that hump.
I really hope it does. But that's all for this segment. Stay tuned for the next segment on The Big Hit.
And welcome back into The Big Hit. I hope those last two segments really got you going, because I know this might be the climax. We have two first-timers here on the show, but it's not amateur hour. We have Austin Smith, Trevor Crowdy. How are you guys doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, Jake. Honestly, it's it's gotten a little bit warmer out here in Indiana, PA. So I mean, we had a real warm day Monday.
Yeah.
So it's gonna get colder though. But look, it's raining out. I don't care. It's time for some hockey talk here.
It is time for some
I don't know about you, but I'm really tired of looking at that guy's jersey.
All right, well,
Well, better
let's
get
get
used to that then. So
The Tampa Bay Lightning are 19-2-1 since the new year. What has caused them to get out of their early season slump, and can they continue this momentum to the end of the season?
Well, I think it really comes down to production from all four lines. You have guys stepping up. Kucherov didn't have the best start of the season, but now he's really picking his game up. You got Stamkos picking his game up, and obviously Vasilevsky, who's been really coming in clutch, making key saves.
my biggest thing, honestly, from the beginning of the season to right now, is honestly playing a full 60-minute game. I've noticed, I don't know about you guys, but from the beginning of the season, the whole team, you look at the scores, just the teams they played, they were not playing, look, it could have been the second, third period, whatever. They maybe played 2 periods. They didn't play the full 60 minutes because the scores were so lopsided. Not only that, though, Andre Vasilevsky has not played to where he is right now. He's obviously stellar right now, but he didn't play like that at the beginning of the season. There's no doubt. And obviously, like you said, Trevor, Kucherov, Braden Point, Stamkos, they're all playing tremendously well right now. And I think I think they can definitely keep this rolling for sure because, well, look at them right now. They're in an 11-game winning streak right now.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And so if they keep doing what they're doing from the start of the new year, this team is going to be a hot team to face in the playoffs. And I'll tell you what, I think they can make it pretty far.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, the last 22 games, they scored points in 20 of them, won 19 of them. That's unparalleled. You can't deny that. I think the early season slump really, you saw in the locker room after they got swept by the Blue Jackets last season, like their interviews, like they were grown men just crying about it, like so distraught, because they were going to go on to be the best team of all time if they won the Stanley Cup last year. And then that definitely carried into the early season. The locker room wasn't there because the roster and that team are so loaded that it has to be a locker room problem. It's not an on-ice problem, It's just a mentality thing because they have the skill, they have the chemistry. They lost JT Miller, they lost a few guys, Dan Girardi, they lost a few guys, but I mean that roster is still absolutely loaded, top to bottom. You can't deny that, especially with Vasilevsky playing like he does. Like the fact that you can have that deep of a defense core with Hedman. With McDonough, with players like that, and then you still know that if you let up an odd man break, Vasilevsky's going to make the save. That is such a morale booster on the ice. That is such a clutch thing. And then Kucherov, obviously, league MVP last year, most points scored by a Russian-born player of all time, 137, coming back, getting hot. That helps. I mean, a big thing for them, too, is special teams. Like, their power plays.
Yeah.
Do not take penalties against the Tampa Bay Lightning. They will score and score and score. Like, they're lethal.
Yeah, and obviously they're pretty dangerous to play at home too, no doubt. Obviously they can play on the road and at home. Doesn't matter where they're playing. So no doubt.
Well, next season they have a lot of free agents on the blue line. Shattenkirk is going to be a free agent, and that was a huge acquisition for the Lightning. So it'll be next year they might have a new look. So this year they definitely want to make that Stanley Cup push.
Yeah, they've been one of the most consistent teams in the NHL the last 6 years. I mean, made the conference final, like 4 out of the last few years. So, I mean, they're very talented. Let's let's hope they can keep it going. Actually, Jabrodi, John Cooper's going to hold them back, so there ain't no chance you win the Stanley Cup, Tampa. I'm sorry.
We'll have to see.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep it local and some passionate here. You know, we got the Crosby jersey on. We got the Flyers jersey on. I'm from Pittsburgh myself. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, despite being riddled with injuries, sit half a game out of first place in the Metropolitan Division. By the time you're watching this, they probably will be sitting first. What has been their key to success among vital injuries like Captain Sidney Crosby? And can this group bring Pittsburgh their third Stanley Cup? Their third Stanley Cup. The third one in the last 5 years.
I think so. I definitely think the Pittsburgh Penguins have the opportunity to win a Stanley Cup again. The key acquisition of Zucker, Galchenyuk really wasn't doing it in Pittsburgh. So it was good to see him go and see them to go out and get somebody that really puts points up. As well as the next man up mentality. I mean, that has been Pittsburgh's game ever since the beginning, since the Crosby era. It's the next man up. And you saw that with the 2 cups they won before, and then especially in the 2016 Cup, you saw the next man up. I mean, with Gensel being hurt, with all these guys being hurt, you guys have like Agazino, Marino, who really stepped up as a key rookie, and just production out of all the guys.
It's pretty good there. Honestly, we keep it plain and simple here. Honestly, from the beginning of the season, Pittsburgh was very inconsistent. Obviously, they dealt with injuries, right? When they lost Crosby, that was definitely a big hurt, and they lost a few more players. But what I thought was their second and third liner players really stepped up big time. That's how they were able to kind of keep it consistent. And then obviously December, hottest month for Pittsburgh and the hottest team in the NHL. Now, moving on to the as far as Cup, well, honestly, there's a lot of tough teams right now this year. Do I think it's possible? Sure. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it is possible. I think that it's definitely possible for Pittsburgh to make it to the Cup final this year. But it's not going to be easy. You have Boston, Tampa. The list goes on and on. There's so many teams that are so many Cup contenders this year. It's not even funny. So it's going to be a challenge.
But now you have Murray really coming in his own this season. I mean, at the beginning of the year, wasn't really looking that great. Last year, he had an all right year. I really think it was Tristan Jarry that pushed Matt Murray to excel his expectations.
Yeah, well, 100% there. And when you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, they're undoubtedly the best ran sports franchise in America, and that is bar none. From management to coaching to the trainers to their farm system, even to the media and the fan access of that team, they're A+ through and through. And the fact that you don't have the best player in the entire sport, arguably the best player to ever play the sport, Sidney Crosby, goes down to your team, and you are the best team in hockey without your best player. There's no other team in sports. If LeBron James goes down, the Lakers are going to suck. If Pat Mahomes goes down, I mean, yeah, Matt Moore won 2 games for him. They're not going to win the Super Bowl, but they're not going to win 5 straight games, be the best team in football with the time Pat Mahomes is out. No, but guess what? When Crosby goes down, and the fact that they're still the best team in hockey, that shows you depth, that shows you coach. Mike Sullivan should be Coach of the Year. Gensel going down hurts, but now you get an acquisition like Justin Zucker kind of replace him until he comes back. Tristan Jarry coming up. You thought the problem, if I was you, I would hate the Pittsburgh Penguins, not because I would just be like, wow, they have Fleury and Murray. That's just unfair. Okay, Fleury's going, oh, they have Murray. They didn't win the Cup. Now it's Tristan Jarry, who's second in the league in save percentage, and you're like, oh my goodness. And Matt Murray won 2 Stanley Cups before his rookie season was over. I'd be like, I don't know where to start. They are so good, and General Manager Jim Rutherford is so GMJR. We trust in GMJR. We trust because he never makes a bad trade. Even if it was Galchenyuk, yeah, he got bit by a spider. He was out for 2 months. All right, Jabroni, he came out the door. Sit down, shut up, drink a beer over in Arizona. I really don't give a damn what you do because Justin Zucker's coming in and he's lighting the lamp in his first 3 games. Pittsburgh Penguins are on. Sidney Crosby about to win his 4th Stanley Cup, and oh my goodness, I'm gonna love it.
We'll have to wait and see for that.
Yeah, we will wait and see. I'm going to love it.
Some high expectations to take Taylor there.
On the contrary, Austin, here's for you. The Philadelphia Flyers are fighting for a wild card spot. It's a pretty close race here in the Eastern Conference. The Metropolitan's loaded. Yeah. So these teams could come down between the New York Islanders, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Florida Panthers. Which 3 of those teams will end up making it to the postseason, and which 2 we're going to have to wait till next year?
All right, well, first off, first 3, the Flyers are getting in. I'm going to start with the first team here. You have to look at Philly this year. The coaching acquisition of Lane Vigneault in the offseason, players like Matt Niskanen, great defenseman, Justin Braun addition, okay? Defense is looking good right now. The goalie combo, Carter Hart, Brian Elliott, pretty good goalies, right? Carter Hart gets injured, a little bit ago, and he's doing fine. Both doing good. Obviously, Hart's more stellar at home, and, I would like Hart to kind of, play a little bit more better on the road. He has improved. Not to mention, though, too, defense looking good. So this team right now, playing up to some of the top teams right now, and you guys have to admit, though, they're playing real good hockey right now. They're playing real. Look, last loss I had against a tough team was Tampa. That was a 5-3 loss, and that fifth goal was an empty net goal. They were even down in that game, and they came back and tied against a hot team. So I have Philly going in for 1. The next one I have Carolina. Carolina is actually currently looking in right now, out looking in. Why do I say Carolina? Because Carolina, I think, has the team to do so. Look at them last year, look at them this year. Columbus is not getting in, and one reason only. It's injury. Seth Jones he's not in the lineup anymore. He's injured. He's on the injured reserve now. Seth Jones, Cam Atkinson. Yeah. You can't make the playoffs with injured players, and that's going to affect Columbus big time. And not to mention, too, Columbus is on a 5-game losing streak right now. So tonight, the Flyers do square off against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they play a home-and-home Thursday as well with Columbus. So now, if somehow Columbus surprises Philly with 2 wins here, this is huge, then maybe I'll change my mind. But right now, no. You got injured players. And as far as Florida, well, the thing with the Atlantic Division, though, is you have to remember, Toronto and Florida are pretty close to each other right now. So actually, Toronto could be going out, and Florida could be coming in. And Toronto could be looking to get into that wild card spot. So it's actually pretty close. So, like to recap, you have Philly going in, and Carolina will get a spot. And then we don't know who's going to finish third, though. That's the thing. Yeah. So it could be the Islanders, right? Could be if the Flyers win tonight, they could jump into third place. That's not really figured out yet. But there's no way Columbus is going to make it. No.
Yeah, I definitely have the New York Islanders making the playoffs. I mean, they've showed the resilient style. They have kind of a boring game of hockey.
They do, but they're definitely 100% agree with you. They're a real good defensive team too, and you know how they play. Their style of hockey, like you said, it's kind of boring.
They're well coached.
It gets well coached, gets the job done. Barry Trotz behind the bench.
Barry Trotz behind the bench. You're gonna be beat exactly.
And you said it. You said with the injuries that Columbus has sustained, I don't think they're going to be able to make the end of the season push to get into the playoffs. With that being said, Florida's kind of looking in right now. So
Florida's a good team. They're good offensively. They don't have any defense.
Yeah.
If you looked at that, they obviously Barkov, Huberdeau, great offensive players, but you need kind of offense and defense to win, games and to kind of make it far.
When they got Bob too, who has been pretty. He's been all right. Not his best.
He's been slacking in some games.
But he's definitely been solid enough for them to win.
Absolutely. There's no doubt.
When I look at this, I think Florida just doesn't have the experience per se, but I think getting Joe Quenneville, 3-time Stanley Cup champion coach, fantastic pickup. Bobrovsky, fantastic goalie. They were doing real well when they had Luongo there. They've made a few runs in the playoffs a few times. I mean, obviously Huberdeau, Barkov, fantastic players. Ekblad in the back too, good. I mean, they just need to add some few more pieces there, and I think they'll get over the hump soon.
So do you think they're going to get into that? Because do you think they're going to get in the third Atlantic Division spot?
I don't know. I like Toronto.
Yeah.
I like Toronto.
So
I like the depth of
that
Toronto.
Florida's out looking
the skill and
for a wild
Florida's going to be because the 2 wild cards are going to be filled with the metropolitan teams. I don't know. I think the Islanders will lock up the third spot. Penguins, Caps, Islanders, and then it'll be between. Philadelphia Flyers and the.
I just want to admit it, but
I just hope he play you first round so he can sweep it and get a nice break.
Honestly, the season series so far. Listen, season series, what is it? 1-1-1. So we lost 1 in overtime. Got a point out of that. We beat you guys. We shut you guys out. Wells Fargo Center 3-0.
Don't forget the 7-2 loss.
That game, the Flyers did not show up at all. I'm going to tell you right now. They didn't show up.
I mean, the last time we played you in the playoffs, we were played you 11 times and we beat you 9.
Yeah, but you should see the Flyers they play against these. Look, Capitals, tough teams. The Flyers are dominant against Capitals this season, right? We're doing pretty against Pittsburgh. We own Columbus 2-0. We're pretty good against Carolina. Okay, the only team we really haven't solved yet is the New York Islanders. That's how it's.
Yeah, that's because it's a good coach. But
Joe Quenneville, though, for the Panthers, real quick. Note the fact is that he's a pretty good coach to get a team in the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
the 1-3
I wouldn't count Florida out quite yet. Yeah, because I just don't think it's going to happen this year. Yeah. Defense has to perk up a little bit more.
Well, take it to the bank. You heard it here first, and you're also going to take this to the bank with a lot of money because we are going to be all things right, no things wrong. The regular season is a little halfway done, so who has been the MVP so far? I know Trevor and I had to flip a coin who we were going to pick before this started, but.
I guess I'll start it. I got Panarin winning this league's MVP. I mean, look who he has around him. He has nothing. He is on a garbage team. He came from Columbus. I mean, probably should have stayed in Columbus.
Probably should have, but he took the bread. You know, they call him the bread man for a reason. And
Well,
he
at
took
least,
big
at least
bread.
he's getting the highlight, right?
Yeah, and he's top 10 in scoring with nobody. You look at the top 10 scorers, you got Pastrnak. Pastrnak has Bergeron and Marchand. You look at Draisaitl's got McDavid. I mean, he's still putting up numbers with no talent around him.
I'm going to go with Draisaitl, Leon Draisaitl. Why? Well, because he has McDavid, and yes, don't get me wrong, McDavid's a heck of a player. But who else really does he have on the Oilers? Okay, you look at many teams that have talent spread throughout the lineup. Draisaitl, not only that, to mention where the Oilers are at right now in the Pacific Division, okay, they're at the top right now, but look at how many points Draisaitl has. I mean, that man is putting up, he leads the league in points right now. And obviously, yes, Connor McDavid might have something to do with that, but there's not, if you look at the whole other roster, who else really has something to do with that, you know what I mean? So I'm picking Draisaitl. I could have had another player, but stick with Draisaitl.
I like Panarin. You know, Panarin's sitting 3 points behind McDavid. And McDavid's a little bit injured. He hasn't played all these games. But McDavid's at -8, and Panarin's a +28. If that doesn't show you the kind of player Connor McDavid is, and if you're sitting here thinking Connor McDavid is the best player in the NHL and he's a -8 on a better team than Panarin, who is 3 points behind but a +28 on a Garbanzo team, jeez Louise, give me a break. Give me a break, Edmonton. Come on. Oh my God. But I had Nathan McKinnon. No, Nathan McKinnon got snubbed out of MVP when Taylor Hall won it. Where's he at now? Exactly. 100th in scoring right now. Who gone knows where Taylor Hall was in Arizona?
He's lost.
Get traded away from the freaking New Jersey
lost.
Devils. Oh my goodness gracious, they're terrible. And, you know,
It's a shame.
just dumping on Taylor Hall. It is a shame, but it's a shame that they snubbed Nathan McKinnon because he should be MVP. He's MVP this season, second in the league in points. Tyler Pastrnak, you know, way behind Leon Draisaitl. But who can help that? You know,
Brad Marchand.
yeah. So I mean, Pasternak's on the best line in hockey. I mean. McKinnon's line's pretty good, but Rantanen just went down. Grubauer's hurt. He's still fighting for the playoff spot. Got snubbed out of it 2 seasons ago. Give it to him now. He's 1 point away from 100 last year. He's going to break that barrier this year. And I hope you stay tuned for this next segment with Charles and Surma talking all things racing, but you better race over to the beer that you're going to sit down, shut up, and drink. Thank you for tuning in to this NHL segment. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Trevor.
Yep.
Welcome back to The Big Hit. We've got our last segment of the day. It's the racing segment with Michael Surma and Charles Sandus. We're going to start off with some NASCAR talk as the ever-popular Daytona 500 took place partially on Sunday and then partially on Monday. Denny Hamlin was the winner, and he's got 38 wins now in his NASCAR career, which is quite a bit. Surma, where does his name lie in the NASCAR hierarchy and his legacy?
Well, first of all, I have to pay tribute to Darrell Waltrip and say, boogity, boogie, boogity, let's go racing, boys. Denny Hamlin, this is his 3rd Daytona 500 now, and only a few named drivers were ever 3-time champions of the Daytona 500. You have Jeff Gordon and Bobby Allison and Dale Jarrett. And this really takes a big step in Denny Hamlin's career and really pushes him up over the hill to the Hall of Fame. In the offseason also, they're saying that Dale Jr. is a possibility for the Hall of Fame, as well as Carl Edwards and Matt Kenseth. So I think Denny Hamlin's way over those marks, and I believe this year he'll win a championship, and he'll be the highest competitive JGR car all season long.
That's a bold prediction, Denny Hamlin taking the championship, which kind of ties into our second question here. The 4-car team of Joe Gibbs Racing, which has Hamlin, Kyle Busch, last year's champion, Martin Truex Jr., the champion the year before that, and Eric Jones all in the stable. Is anyone going to be able to compete with them all year?
I believe JGR, Joe Gibbs Racing, will decline just a little bit because of Martin Truex Jr.'s strong relationship over the radio during the races with his crew chief Cole Pearn, which you could argue as one of the biggest driver and crew chief pairings in history, because Truex wasn't much of anything before Cole Pearn got there. He only won 2 races. He won at Dover, he won at Sonoma, but hasn't done anything other than that. And then Cole Pearn just comes in and makes him a championship contender, and with the JGR alliance with Furniture Row Racing, which is now not there, Truex was able to get over his biggest defaults and biggest declines by being consistent anywhere he goes, and anywhere he goes, you know he has a chance to win. Now, with James Small as the crew chief, he's saying there's a possibility that he'll have to get used to this crew chief with his Australian accent. But I believe Truex will still be strong, although the wins will decline just a little bit. And I believe Denny Hamlin will at least reach 7 or 8 wins. And Kyle Busch, well, you know, Mr. M&M's is going to be there, and he's going to wreck somebody to win somehow, and he's going to find a cheap way to destroy somebody and win, as he usually does. But I believe the only team that has a real shot right now at the moment to compete with JGR is Team Penske. But that's the matter if Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski can get over this fight from the clash, if you want to call it the Busch crash. If they can get over that incident, they'll be able to compete because they're working as a team. Now, they'll need to win at more mile and a half and more specialty tracks to catch up. But I believe they could catch up, and with the crew chief swap in Team Penske, with Ryan Blaney now having Todd Gordon, and Joey Logano now having Paul Wolfe, and Brad Keselowski now having Jeremy Bolins from the Xfinity Series, who he drove with for so many years. I believe this change-up will give him a chance to at least compete with JGR and be there at the end.
All right, so we got one more question about Denny Hamlin. He's now won 3 of the last 4 Daytona 500s. Charles, we'll start with you on this one. We always saw a lot of success at super speedways with Dale Earnhardt and his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. on super speedways. Is Hamlin the next Earnhardt in NASCAR on super speedways?
First, I'm going to say it bluntly, not yet. Second, I'm going to elaborate as to why. I feel if he's really going to be deserving of that title, he's going to have to crash. To be honest with you, if you remember the old days of the Earnhardts, they would always suffer a hard defeat, and then they would just come back plowing strong. You need to learn that fault before you can really go sky high. And until he does it, he is not a true Earnhardt.
That's some really deep analysis. I thought that's very good because when you think about it, he's got a good point. Denny Hamlin, all 3 of his Daytona 500 wins, or maybe with the exception of last year, he's completely locked into them and just basically fallen ass backwards into it. You look back to 2016, Matt Kenseth had that race won until he got dumped out of the way and just
Ryan
barely
Newman this year.
Yeah, just barely beat Martin Truex. And then you had the whole thing happen with Ryan Newman. We'll touch on that a little bit later. That Hamlin really shouldn't have won that race. And even if Newman had gotten wrecked, it should have been Ryan Blaney. But then that slowed Blaney down enough. But in any case, we'll go ahead now to the fact that 7-time Jimmy Johnson is retiring from NASCAR after this season. He's won 7 championships, tied with Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt, as we just elaborated on. Who do you think is going to replace him, Surma, in that number 48 machine for Rick Hendrick?
I'll give you a few names here. I don't think this is the greatest prospect, but I believe Noah Gragson at least deserves a shot and a chance at getting the 48. He just won the Daytona race in the Xfinity Series, so he's climbing up there. And this year with the big 3 out of the Xfinity Series with Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, and Cole Custer all run for Cup Rookie of the Year, Gragson has a chance to really run at this Xfinity Series title and take another step up. My next guy is Kyle Larson. Now, you can say whatever you want about Chip Ganassi. They're up and down sometimes, but sometimes they can be really consistent and sometimes they're just not there. And I believe already with Larson's Hendrick affiliation with Chip Ganassi, I believe that would be a really good fit and it would be a good veteran presence for that team. And Corey LaJoie, he went backstage in the Hall of Fame ceremony and gave a letter to Rick Hendrick considering him as a driver. Corey LaJoie, I just don't trust you, sorry. No. You're with Go Fast Racing, and you're in a Ford, which is totally different from a Chevy, and you're on a low-funded team who just started to get a tech alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing this year. So maybe you can replace Clint Boyer or Eric Almirola, who are very average, or you could even say below average, but I don't think Corey LaJoie is the right fit for this ride.
It's going to be interesting to see who can fill the shoes of 7-time. All right, so we've had plenty of NASCAR talk. Now we'll send it over to Charles. He's always got just absolutely nuts and wonderful information about the rest of the world of motorsports, which quite frankly, I'm just out of touch on. So it's great to hear from him, and we'll leave it to him now for a couple of moments.
Well, I'd like to start off with the fact that Volkswagen is looking to change the entirety of motorsports as we know it. Volkswagen has made a vow that by the year 2025, their entire fleet of vehicles will strictly be electric. They have a goal to make Europe entirely 100% electric power. Which honestly, why are we complaining? Because if you look what they've done with the IDR has taken Pikes Peak's top speed record, taken their best lap time record, and just recently, it reached the Nürburgring record for world's fastest electric car on the Nürburgring. It is 3 times faster than that new Tesla Model S with the tri-motor display that is coming out recently. So I must ask, do you think once Formula E gets faster, all the professional drivers will start moving to Formula E?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all electric is going to be something that we're going to have to go toward within the next, I mean, it may take a long time to really get there in terms of all motorsports, you know. I think all electric in general is just going to have to happen if we get the the right people in the positions of power. So I think it's a good step for Volkswagen to start doing this.
I don't think Formula E has been that competitive or that good in the past few years, but I think it's building slightly and increasingly, just a little step by step. And if you get big prospects like Felix Rosenqvist that go from Formula E to Chip Ganassi Racing in the IndyCar series, you might have a chance to build something out of this and actually maybe compete with Formula One in attention span and interest, because we're going to go into electric anytime soon now, basically with everything motorsports. So I believe this is a good step towards what we're going to get in the future.
Yeah, speaking of Formula One, we've been having a little bit of things going on in Formula One as well. More recently, Mercedes-Benz has been having a bit of issues with working out their engine. They're not really disclosing as to what's specifically happening, of course, for secrecy reasons, but we can tell that things are looking to be for a rough start with them. And I'm also getting word that Honda and Mercedes-Benz are looking to pull out of Formula One entirely. Honda, as we know, is one of the greatest engine suppliers for Formula One, and Mercedes-Benz is currently the leading brand. They're thinking about replacing themselves with Aston Martin, but even then, who's to say what will happen, especially with Honda leaving?
I'd find that hard to believe right now at this moment, because Mercedes-Benz and that team, even with Lewis Hamilton's teammate, they just push the limits every time, and it seems like every week it's Mercedes-Benz in that mix and Lewis Hamilton. I can't see why they'd want to go away from that dominance, and all you have other than Mercedes really is Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel, and depending on how fast Red Bull or Aston Martin or Ferrari is, you know.
Well, I forgot to mention this, but Aston Martin's going to take over Mercedes' prime role. Like, they're going to have Lewis and, all of them just going for their team. So they'll essentially be Mercedes, but with an Aston Martin badge. Do you feel like they're deserving of that, or should they be a new team?
I'm not real sure, because Aston Martin hasn't always been up to the top level like McLaren has been in the past with Button and Alonso back in the day. And I just don't know, because they've been mid-pack basically for a decade now at least. And, you got Verstappen and Vettel and pretty much Hamilton. And other than that, who do you got? Because other than that, you've seen with the Haas team that's been so overhyped, they just sit in the middle of the pack and they don't go up and they don't build, and they just seem to stay in that 8th to 12th place range. I wonder if Aston Martin will actually be able to step up their game as good as Mercedes right now, and if they'll be able to dominate the sport as well as Mercedes has in this past decade.
And I guess to finish off with our last story, we know recently that Toyota has acquired the company Gazoo Racing as their new tuning division, pretty much eliminating TRD as their primary tuning division. And because of that, they've started to make new cars with Gazoo Racing, with the GR Spec. The first car to be unveiled with this GR Spec was the new Toyota Yaris, which is dubbed the GR Yaris. As it stands now, it is currently a Japan-exclusive car, which will not be available in the United States. However, Gazoo Racing is looking to make a GR CHR, which would be a sport compact SUV. I must ask everyone, are hot hatches dead in the United States? Because from what I'm seeing, I would beg to defer. But if you think very carefully about the market, you're asking a bunch of broke college kids to buy a fresh spec, high-class car for about $36,000, and they really want it, but they just can't afford it. So, how do we fix the hot hatch dilemma here in America?
Sounds like you've got us speechless, Charles. There just may not.
You guys
be,
don't like hot hatches, let's be honest.
there just may not be a good fix to this issue.
There isn't really, because like I said before, you got high demand, but really, really low profit returns. In fact, most companies that make these cars have lost profits. Honda with their Civic Type R has barely even cut by with their profits. The Subaru WRX has actually gone slightly down in sales, and the Mitsubishi Evo is just completely gone. Volkswagen Golf, that's still there, but again, low sales. And then the Ford Focus, forget it. Ford just got rid of it and switched it to the EcoBoost. It's gone. It's a shame, really, because this is such a great beginner division. The only thing that's really comparable to it is the MX-5, but that's an entirely different classification of car. In fact, it even has its own division called the MX-5 Cup Series. But hot hatches, what do they have? They're like the most sportiest beginner cars ever, and they don't even have their own racing division.
I have to say something else about Ford, too. Ford GT, who was in the IMSA program for so many years with Chip Ganassi, got out after last year, and they don't know if they're coming back or not. We may never see Ford and IMSA again.
I'll leave it on this note. Toyota, I'm begging you, please bring us the GR Yaris. I will buy one new. I'm serious. I will take out a loan if it means I can get a GR Yaris. I don't care what it's spec to. It's better than this. I want one. I don't want a CHR. I'm sorry. My rant's over.
Let me say one more thing on the Daytona 500 before we cut out here. The biggest idiot in the Daytona 500 was Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
As usual.
Hey, Ricky, what are you doing? You don't race everybody single-handedly yourself just because you have the fastest car on lap 45 out of 200. And then you have to take out my guy, one of my guys, William Byron, so he can get slammed into the wall and slide through the grass. All because of you. And it ended up in the end that you got screwed over anyway. So nice going, Ricky Stenhouse. As usual, you somehow ruined Daytona and Talladega even more because you like to be too aggressive and you can't be patient and just wait. Wait, because you have an affiliation with Hendrick now. You have a Hendrick engine in that JTG Doherty car, and you should work with your teammates, no matter if you want to be first or not. If you think you're better than them, that's great, but don't go do it yourself and then wreck somebody else and then ruin their race because you thought you were faster than him. Well, guess what? Maybe if somebody comes down to help you, then maybe you can try something. But not single file line train. You're just causing yourself for a wreck, and then you screw yourself later because you end up spinning out. So what was that really worth, Ricky Stenhouse? What was that really worth to steal points away from William Byron? What was that really worth, Ricky Stenhouse? You just never learned your lesson. And when you go to Talladega, I better see you be a little conservative and not so aggressive until the final laps of the race, because you're just destroying it for other people and you're not thinking about the others on the track. You're just thinking about how fast your car is and how fast you are on those tracks, because that's your only specialty.
Well, I, for one, couldn't think of a better way to end the show. We have Michael Surma going on a rant about the man also known as Ricky Stenhouse, and a self-described broke college kid, Charles Sanders, saying he's ready to take out a $36,000 loan to buy a really freaking awesome car. So we'll update you on how that and everything else in the world of sports is going next week on The Big Hit.